The trial was not like human trials. There were no loud arguments in a crowded room. It happened mostly in silence, in secure data networks. The Court of Interspecies Accord reviewed the evidence. The Vix-Thalir government, desperate to save itself, helped. They gave more data. They confirmed the human findings. They surrendered the guard with the red fronds. They surrendered the second in command. They surrendered the security chief, whose voice was on the recording. There was no fight. The evidence was a wall they could not climb over. The truth was too clear. The court's judgment was swift. The 3 Vix-Thalir were found guilty of political murder and conspiracy. They were sentenced to permanent isolation on a barren asteroid, their communication with the galaxy cut forever. It was a living death for social beings like them. The Vix-Thalir government itself was given a heavy punishment. They had to pay a large sum to Jinsu's family. They had to pay a larger sum to the Earth government. They had to open their stations to random checks by the Galactic Commons for 10 cycles. Their reputation was broken. They were no longer seen as wise elders. They were seen as flawed and dangerous. But the story did not end with the court's words. The real end happened in the minds of everyone else. On Earth, Jinsu was buried. It was a quiet ceremony by the sea, as he had wanted. His daughter, Mina, stood with her mother. They cried, but they also smiled at stories told about him. The world watched and felt a quiet pride mixed with the sadness. They had not added more death to his death. They had given him a different kind of honor. In the galaxy, things began to change. The change was slow, like a ship turning a new course. The Galactic, who had been ready for war with humans, sent a new message. It was not a diplomatic note. It was a request. They asked for human engineers to visit. They wanted to understand the quantum forge, the thing Jinsu had died trying to share. They said, "You used reason as a weapon. We wish to use reason as a tool. With you." Other species, smaller ones who were often pushed around by older powers, looked at Earth with new eyes. They sent quiet messages. They asked for trade talks. They asked for protection treaties. They were not afraid of human anger anymore. They were interested in human patience. They had seen that humans could be trusted to keep their word, even when hurt. The story of the human response became a lesson. It was studied in diplomatic schools on 1,000 worlds. Teachers would ask, "What is true power?" And the students would discuss the humans. They did not win by having the biggest guns. They won by having the clearest facts. They did not attack the body. They attacked the story. And they used the enemy's own rules to do it. On the Vix-Thalir station, the Garden of Harmonious Shadow was empty. The magistrate was gone, removed in shame by its own people. A new leader was trying to rebuild. One day, a human ship docked. It was not the Steadfast. It was a small, fast courier ship. Captain Taiyang walked out. He went to the gallery where Jinsu died. He stood there for a long time, looking at the nebula. Then he placed a single smooth stone from Earth's ocean on the floor where Jinsu had fallen. It was a simple, solid thing in the middle of all the glowing crystal. He turned to leave. A young Vix-Thalir attendant, its fronds a nervous pale green, chimed softly at him. Do you hate us?" Taiyang stopped. He looked at the young being. He saw not an enemy, but a person who was afraid. "No," he said. "Hate is a fire. It burns the one who holds it. We do not have time for fires. We have bridges to build." He left. The young Vix-Thalir looked at the ordinary stone on the glorious floor. It did not belong, but it was there. A permanent, quiet mark. Years later, a monument was built on Earth. It was not a statue of a soldier or a warship. It was a simple, open arch made of gray stone. In the center was a pillar of light. On the pillar, in many languages, with the facts of Jinsu's death, the weapon used, the people responsible, the law that convicted them. And below the facts, just one sentence. We chose to remember, not to rage. Ambassador Yuna, now older, often visited. She would bring Mina, who was now a young woman studying law. They would stand under the arch. They thought we would show them our teeth, Yuna said one day, holding Mina's hand. Instead, we showed them our memory, our patience. It scared them more than any weapon. Mina looked at the pillar of light. He would have liked this. He always said the strongest argument is the one you don't have to shout. In the Galactic Commons, humans were no longer given seats at the far edge. They were asked to sit closer to the center. Their opinions were listened to, not because others feared an attack, but because they respected the result. When humans spoke, they spoke softly. They backed their words with data. They had learned that a whisper with truth behind it is louder than a scream with nothing. The stars were, as the title said, left in shock. But the shock faded into a new understanding. The galaxy had learned a dangerous, wonderful truth. The most terrifying force in the cosmos is not mindless violence. It is intelligent restraint. It is a species that can be wronged, and instead of lashing out, can simply wait and think, and then with perfect, quiet precision, dismantle the wrong. They had not just solved the murder. They had changed the game. And as Mina turned from her father's monument, looking up at the stars beginning to twinkle in the evening sky, she felt it. The silence around Earth was no longer the silence of grief. It was the silence of a watchful eye, a calm, patient presence in the dark. And the galaxy, once shocked, had learned to listen to it. The great chamber was a masterpiece of ancient engineering and living light. It hummed with a low, soothing frequency meant to calm the myriad species of the Galactic Council. Stars, real and holographic, drifted in the vaulted ceiling, mapping 1,000 peaceful millennia of expansion. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something floral, a scent cultivated to be universally pleasant. Today, the scent did nothing to mask the tension. Ambassador J stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind the simple gray fabric of his human envoy uniform. Next to him, Ambassador Mina scanned the assembled delegates with calm, dark eyes, committing their reactions to memory. They were a stark contrast to the beings around them. Where the veiled delegate shimmered with iridescent scales and the Grothan representative was a collection of gentle, photosynthetic fronds, the two humans seemed. Solid, simple, almost dull. The proposal is not one of aggression. Jay's voice was clear, amplified by the translator disc on his chest. It rendered his words into 100 languages, but could do nothing about the flat, earnest tone. Our vessels, which you have observed, are purely for deep system defense. The anomalies detected at the rim of the Centauri drift pose a credible, if unknown, threat. We seek only the right to protect our own colonies. As per the Council's own Charter of Sovereign Development, Subsection 9, a ripple moved through the chamber, a mixture of sighs, soft chitters, and the rustle of alien limbs. From the central podium, the Val ambassador, Elder Cathar, rose. His form was tall and willowy, his face a long mask of serene, ageless wisdom. He was older than human civilization. Ambassador J. Caithar's voice was a melodic whisper that filled the space, the translator making it sound kind. We appreciate your diligence, but you speak of threats we have monitored for centuries. The patterns you call anomalies are well-documented cosmic background fluctuations. Your species' perception of danger is, understandably, heightened by your own violent history. The charter is for mature civilizations who have moved beyond the paranoia of their infancy. Mina's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Jay did not blink. With respect, Elder, Mina said, her voice softer than Jay's, but no less firm. Our data is extensive. We have shared our sensor logs. The activity is not random. It shows coordination, purpose. To ignore it is to risk not only human lives, but potentially the stability of this entire sector. A low chuckle emanated from the Grothan delegation, sounding like wind through reeds. The human concept of extensive data is charming, said their speaker, a being known as Flourish of Dawn. You have observed the stars for a blink. We have watched galactic arms spiral. Your tools are toys. Your fears are the nightmares of a child, afraid of the shadows in its own room. Jay felt a flush of heat on his neck. He kept his breathing even. They had anticipated dismissal, but the sheer, polite condescension was a physical weight. Our request is modest, Jay pressed. We do not ask for council military support. We ask for you to not stand in our way. Allow us to fortify the Oort cloud monitoring stations. Grant limited clearance for our new patrol vessels, the Jeju class, to operate beyond the Kuiper Belt. Deny us, and you leave us blind. Elder Cathar gestured with a long, three-jointed finger. A massive hologram ignited in the center of the chamber. It showed a human warship, the UNSS Matsumi. The image zoomed in, highlighting its welded titanium armor, its chemical propulsion boosters, its banks of primitive missile batteries. To the humans, it was a vessel of immense pride, the culmination of decades of work. In the silent chamber, it looked like a crude metal canister. This, Cathar said, the kindness gone, replaced by a weary firmness, is the source of our concern. You pour your resources, your brilliant young minds into these things, while your oceans acidify and your political factions squabble over fossilized energy sources. You build weapons to fight phantoms. This is not the path of a species seeking maturity. It is the path of a species clinging to its savage adolescence. The word hung in the air. Savage. It was not the first time it had been used in council sessions about humanity, but it was the first time it had been spoken so directly, so officially. Our environmental and social programs are separate matters, Mina replied, her cheeks now flushed. We are addressing them. But a house must have walls before it can have a garden. The galaxy is not a safe neighborhood, no matter how old and wise its residents may be. Her words caused a minor stir. Impudence. The humans were always so emotional. Your metaphor is revealing, Cathar said. You see walls. We see bridges. You see neighbors as potential threats. We see them as partners. This mindset is the core of the issue. He leaned forward, his star-like eyes fixed on them. The Galactic Council cannot, in good conscience, allow a species with this confrontational psychology to proliferate its weaponry into regions of space under our stewardship. The risk of an incident, of a misunderstanding that could spark a conflict, is too great. He straightened up, his form casting a long shadow. Therefore, the Council has reached a decision. All human military expansion beyond the orbit of your planet Mars is hereby suspended, effective immediately. The Jeju-class project is terminated. Your existing deep space assets will be met by Council peacekeeping vessels and escorted home. Earth will submit to a Council Oversight Committee to guide your technological and sociological development towards more peaceful ends. The ultimatum was delivered not with a shout, but with the quiet finality of absolute authority. It was a death sentence for human aspirations, wrapped in the language of benevolent concern. Jay felt the air leave his lungs. This was worse than they had imagined. They had expected a denial, perhaps sanctions. Not this total dismantling of their sovereignty. You are making a catastrophic mistake, Jay said, his voice low, the first crack in his composure showing. You are judging us by your own ancient history. We are not you. Our context is different. Our dangers are real. Your cycle of fear and violence is what is real, Cathar responded, unmoved. We are breaking that cycle for you. You may see it as harsh. In 1,000 years, your descendants will thank us." He nodded, and the hologram of the Matsumi vanished, replaced by the serene, spinning symbol of the Galactic Council. The session was over. The delegates began to rise, their conversations a soft murmur. No one looked at the two humans standing alone in the center of the floor. Mina turned to Jay. No words were needed. The message in her eyes was clear. They have not just rejected us. They have declared us unfit to manage our own survival. Together, they walked out of the magnificent chamber, their footsteps echoing on the polished stone. The grand doors, engraved with the history of galactic harmony, slid shut behind them with a soft, definitive thud, sealing them out in the stark, utilitarian hallway of the diplomatic wing. Inside their small, assigned envoy shuttle, the silence was heavy. Jay slumped into the pilot's chair, not starting the engines. He just stared at the console. "Savage," Mina whispered, finally letting the fury twist her features. "They think we're savages because we want to protect our children. They think we're savages because we remember what it's like to be afraid," Jay corrected, his voice hollow. "They've been safe for so long, they've forgotten. They've forgotten that the dark sometimes holds real teeth." He finally powered up the shuttle. The comms channel blinked with a formal, automated message from the Council, the detailed terms of the embargo, and the schedule for the peacekeeper arrival at Pluto's orbit. One standard cycle. 7 Earth days. Jay looked at Mina, the despair in his eyes hardening into something else, something cold and determined. "They gave us an ultimatum. They think it's the end of the conversation." Mina met his gaze, her own fury settling into a steely resolve. She gave a single, sharp nod. "Then we'll have to show them it was just the beginning." The journey back from the council seat was long, a week in the featureless gray tunnel of faster-than-light travel. Jay and Mina spent it in near silence, reviewing the data, the cold dismissal, the word savage echoing in the quiet hum of the ship. They didn't sleep much. When they finally broke Earth's atmosphere, descending through familiar white clouds, the sight of the blue planet below brought no comfort. It looked like a target. They were not taken to a regular spaceport. Their shuttle was guided by a tight, encrypted beam to a nondescript landing platform in the middle of the vast Gobi Desert. The air that hissed into the cabin when the door opened was dry and cold, smelling of dust and concrete. 2 figures waited for them, silhouetted against the setting sun. "Welcome home," said Commander Sumi. She was a short woman with a severe black bob and eyes that missed nothing. She wore the simple gray uniform of the United Terran Command, but with no rank insignia. Next to her, Dr. Juan offered a faint, weary smile. He looked like a man who had not seen the sun in years, pale and thin, but his handshake was firm. No time was wasted. A concealed elevator took them deep underground. The facility was a shock. Jay and Mina, who had represented humanity's public technological face, the sturdy, practical starships and fusion reactors, gaped at their surroundings. This was different. It was all smooth, dark surfaces, silent magnetic transports, and a hum of energy that was felt in the bones, not heard. "This is Project Jallarn," Sumi said, as they walked down a long, softly lit corridor. Her voice was matter of fact. "It began 60 years ago, the day we first decoded a leaked council historical file. It wasn't a weapons schematic. It was a sociological report. They entered a circular command center. Walls of data streamed in silent, glowing waterfalls. In the center, a hologram of the galaxy slowly turned. Juan gestured, and the image zoomed into the core systems, highlighting a complex, pulsing lattice of light. "The Council's power," Juan said, his voice soft but intense, "doesn't come from their ships. Those are for show. It comes from this, the quantum core nexus, It's the root system of their entire civilization. It regulates every FTL jump, processes every major transaction, coordinates their defense grids. It is their beating heart. Mina stared at the intricate web. It's a single point of failure. That's incredibly arrogant. Or incredibly confident, Jay murmured. They think it's unassailable. Is it? Juan smiled his thin smile. By their rules of war, yes. It is defended by layers of energy shields that could swallow stars. Any physical attack would be detected and vaporized light years away. Any digital intrusion is impossible through their external firewalls, which are, admittedly, masterpieces. Sumi picked up the explanation. So we stopped trying to break their rules. We started looking for a door they didn't know was there. She changed the hologram. It now showed a human brain, its neural pathways lighting up in sync with the Nexus's lattice. We found it in ourselves, in our neurology. The council species, Juan explained, evolved in stability. Their thought patterns are linear, efficient, logical. Ours are different. Our brains are Messier. They make chaotic, intuitive leaps. They are forged in adversity. The Jallarhorn project wasn't about building a bigger gun. It was about training a new kind of mind. We selected individuals not soldiers, but philosophers, artists, puzzle solvers, even dreamers. People like Dae Hyen and Ji Woo. The hologram shifted to show two dossiers. A man and a woman in their 30s, with calm, intelligent faces. Dae Hyen was a former bioengineer turned master of Go. Ji Woo was a theoretical musician who composed for quantum computers. We enhanced them, Juan said, the words heavy with ethical weight. Not with strength or speed, with focus, with a neural adaptive capability. Their minds can consciously interact with quantum state processors. They don't hack a system. They persuade it. They make it see them as part of its own background processes. Jay understood now. The savage retaliation. They're already there. Sumi nodded. For the last 5 years, in waves. As traders, as refugees, as low-level technicians. The Council's biometric security scans for known threat patterns, weapon signatures, aggressive postures, known combat algorithms. It doesn't scan for a quiet mind humming a strange song that perfectly matches the resonance frequency of a security substation. Dae Hyen, Ji Woo, and 300 others like them are already embedded on key Council worlds, including the seat itself. They are dormant, waiting. The plan unfolded in the hologram before them. It was not a battle. It was a symphony of silence. At a designated time, the operatives would activate. Using their unique neural patterns, they would perform a simultaneous, gentle push against the Nexus. Not an attack, but a redirection. A subtle shift in the fundamental protocols governing travel and communication. Their FTL drives will receive a standby command. Their communications will get a network busy signal. Their defensive grids will go into a diagnostic loop, Sumi said. It will last for 72 minutes. Long enough to make a point, not long enough to cause systemic collapse and kill billions. Mina sat down slowly. And the Council itself? Juan brought up a schematic of the Council chamber. The chamber's security, the personal shields, the teleport inhibitors, the anti-intruder fields, all draw tiny. Dedicated feed from the Nexus. When the Nexus hiccups for those 72 minutes, those systems will believe they are undergoing a scheduled maintenance cycle. They will power down. The mighty Council will sit in their chamber, utterly, physically vulnerable for the first time in their history. No shields. No guards. Just them. The audacity of it stole Jay's breath. Humanity would not fire a single shot. They would not send a single warship. They would simply turn off the lights and remove the locks. The retaliation was not against flesh and blood, but against certainty, against absolute safety. "It's terrifying," Jay whispered. "It's us," Sumi said, her voice unyielding. "They called us savage for looking into the dark and preparing for teeth. So we showed them what a true savage does. We don't just roar at the dark. We learn to see in it. We move through it without a sound. And we sit down at the heart of our enemy's home before they even know we've left our chair." She looked at the two ambassadors, the ones who had borne the council's contempt. "You will go back. When the silence falls, you will walk into their chamber, and you will explain the new reality. You will not threaten. You will simply state facts. The Nexus is ours. Your safety is an illusion we allow. The blockade is over. Our sovereignty is not a request." Jay looked from the galaxy map to the faces of the operatives, Daehyun and Ji-woo. They looked so ordinary, so peaceful. They were the most dangerous weapons humanity had ever created, not because of what they could destroy, but because of what they could quietly, gently unmake. The Council had given humanity an ultimatum, believing it held all the power. They did not understand that humanity had spent decades building a key to a door the Council had forgotten existed. The countdown to their silence had begun the moment the word savage was spoken. And now it was ticking toward 0. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber stretched from moments into minutes, a thick, heavy thing. The floating message, "Stand down," continued its slow rotation, a cold, digital sun in the center of their world. The initial confusion had hardened into a stunned, collective dread. They were not under attack by fleets or bombs. They were under attack by the impossible. Elder Cathar stared at the message, his mind racing through millennia of tactical knowledge and finding no reference, no precedent. A system-wide override without a physical breach? It defied logic. His eyes scanned the chamber. The Grothan delegates had clustered together, their fronds clenched tight. The robust, mineral-based Thulians stood motionless, their crystalline bodies clicking softly in a stress response. All of them, every species, looked vulnerable. The soft glow of the emergency lights made the grand hall look like a cavern dot. It was then that the main doors, still standing unnervingly open, framed two figures. The human ambassadors, Jay and Mina, walked back into the chamber. Their steps echoed in the profound quiet. They did not wear armor or carry weapons. They wore the same simple gray envoy uniforms from days before. But everything about them was different. Their posture was not that of supplicants, but of witnesses arriving to deliver a verdict. No guard moved to stop them. The automated sentinels stood dark in their alcoves. The personal energy shields that usually shimmered around each delegate's podium were absent. Jay and Mina walked unchallenged to the center of the floor, directly beneath the glowing galactic map. Cathar found his voice, though it sounded strange to his own ears, stripped of its melodic certainty. "What have you done?" It was not a demand, but a question torn from a place of deep, unsettling fear. Jay looked up at the Vel Elder. He did not smile. His face was calm, etched with a gravity that seemed older than his years. "We have done what you forced us to do, Elder. We have ensured our survival." "This is an act of war," hissed a Thulian delegate, its voice like grinding stones. "Is it?" Mina asked, turning her head slowly to address the being. Her voice was clear and carried easily in the silent room. "Has a single shot been fired? Has a single life been taken? Has even one of your precious worlds been scarred? Look at your own diagnostics. The Nexus is intact. We have not broken your toy. We have simply asked it to be quiet for a moment." The simplicity of her words was more terrifying than any threat. Cathar's mind recoiled. How? The security protocols. The quantum encryption. It is flawless. It was, Jay agreed, nodding. flawless against the threats you understood. You built a perfect lock, Elder, but you never considered that someone might not try to pick it. You never considered that someone might grow a key inside themselves from the same material as the lock. He paused, letting the cryptic statement hang. The confusion on the alien faces was absolute. They could understand a siege, a betrayal, a superweapon. They could not understand this. For decades, Mina continued, picking up the thread, you studied us. You saw our wars, our strife, our savagery. You judged us as chaotic and dangerous. You were right, but not in the way you thought. Our chaos is not a weakness. It is our engine. Our minds are not linear. They are adaptive. They thrive on solving problems that have no clear answer. You presented us with a problem: how to survive the judgment of a power that considered itself untouchable. Jay gestured to the rotating galaxy above. You saw our ships, our toys, and you laughed. While you were watching our hands, you never thought to watch our eyes. You never wondered what we were looking at. We were looking at you. We studied your history, your psychology, your technology, not to copy it, but to understand its heart. And we found it, beating alone in a dark room, so sure of its own safety it had forgotten how to be afraid. A soft chime, pre-programmed, sounded from Jay's wrist. He glanced at it. Our operatives, people like Dae Hyun and Ji Woo, are not soldiers. They are gardeners, musicians, archivists. Their weapon is their perception. They can hear the song your Nexus sings to itself. And for the last 72 minutes, they have been gently suggesting it sing a different tune. The revelation was a physical blow to the Council. Their perfect centralized system had been subverted not by force, but by artistry, by a different way of thinking. The vulnerability was not just technological. It was philosophical. Their entire worldview had a blind spot, and humanity had simply walked through it. You infected our most sacred system with your consciousness? Cathar whispered, aghast. We showed it a new pattern, Mina corrected softly. One it found more harmonious for a little while. Your peacekeeper fleets are stopped. Your communications are silent. Your defenses are asleep. For this moment, right now, the great Galactic Council sits in its beautiful chamber, completely and totally at our mercy. If we were the savages you believe us to be, you would all be dead. But we are not. Jay took a step forward, his gaze sweeping the room, meeting the many-eyed, many-formed stares of the delegates. We are the species that remembers the dark. We are the species that looks at a perfect wall and wonders what is on the other side, not to conquer it, but to understand it. You tried to put us in a cage for our own good. Today, we proved the cage was an illusion. We are already outside. We have been for years. He let that truth sink in. The operatives were already here. Among them, the horror deepened on the alien faces. Trust was now another shattered thing. The Nexus will be returned to you, fully functional, in approximately 1 hour, Mina stated. The blockades at our borders will end. The Oversight Committee is dissolved. Earth will not be governed. This is not a negotiation. The finality in her voice was absolute. This was not a plea for a seat at the table. This was a statement that they had built their own table, in a room the Council didn't know existed. Flourish of the dawn. The Grothan trembled, its fronds a pale yellow. And if we refuse? If we rally our fleets the moment control is returned? Jay looked at the being, and for the first time, there was something like pity in his eyes. Then you will have learned nothing, and we will have to teach you a harder lesson. The door we open today does not close. We can walk through it any time. You can spend your eternity building taller walls, but we will always be the ones who remember how to grow a key. The choice is not between war and peace. It is between acceptance and endless, futile fear. We have lived with that choice for millennia. Now it is yours." He gave a slight, formal bow. Mina did the same. Then, together, they turned and walked back towards the open doors, the same way they had come. The council could only watch them go, their forms shrinking against the bright rectangle of daylight dot behind them. The holographic message continued to turn, stand down. It was no longer a command. It was a description of their new reality. The council was not standing down their ships. They were standing down their arrogance, their certainty, their millennia of unchallenged supremacy. And in the echoing silence they left behind, filled only with the fearful breaths of 100 species, the Galactic Council began to understand the true meaning of the word savage. It did not mean violent. It meant unpredictable. It meant adaptable. It meant being so deeply, fundamentally different that you could not be controlled, only respected, or feared. And in that moment, silence was the only thing left to them. The great doors closed behind Jay and Mina with a softer sound than before, more like a seal than a slam. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, the silence did not break. It settled. It became a physical presence, a weight on every shoulder, a chill in the air that the weak emergency lights could not warm. Elder Cathar did not move from his podium. His eyes were fixed on the spot where the humans had stood. The rotating message stand down continued to glow, its light reflecting in the wide, dark eyes of the delegates. No one spoke. The usual hum of translators was gone, but even if it had been working, there were no words in any of their languages for this. Flourish of the dawn, the Grothan was the first to make a sound. A low, shivering whistle escaped its fronds, a distress signal of its species. The sound seemed to break the spell of pure shock, but what followed was not chaos. It was a deeper, more profound stillness. Beings who had guided the fate of the galaxy for eons found themselves reduced to the most basic state, uncertainty. On the bridge of the Val Peacekeeper flagship near Pluto, the captain watched the same message on his screen. The standby order had not changed. His crew, trained for millennia in protocols of engagement and diplomacy, had no procedure for this. They could not fight an enemy they could not see. They could not even move. They were frozen not by a weapon, but by an idea. The captain looked at the image of the blue and white marble of Earth, hanging so peacefully in the void, and felt a tremor of something like superstition. What slept on that world? Back in the chamber, Caithar's mind, so ancient and wise, raced down paths of logic that all ended in cliffs. Retaliation? Against what? The human warships were still in their docks, useless. The source of the attack was a ghost in their own most vital machine. A preemptive strike on Earth? It would be an act of horrific barbarism, and worse, it would guarantee the hidden human operatives would unleash something truly catastrophic. The humans had not just demonstrated power, they had demonstrated a terrifying restraint. They had shown they could hold the galaxy's heart in their hand and chose not to squeeze. What would happen if they were provoked? A Thulian delegate finally stirred, its crystalline body grating as it turned. We must reconvene. We must analyze the breach. There must be a flaw we can patch. Its voice, usually confident, was thin, searching for the old ways. And what will you patch? Caithar's voice surprised even himself. It was flat, drained of all its former melody. It was the voice of a being confronted with an undeniable truth. Will you patch out a different way of thought? Will you rewrite the laws of physics to forbid a human mind from dreaming a new pattern? They did not hack our system, delegate. They conversed with it. They found a resonance we did not know existed. You cannot patch a universe that is wider than your understanding. His words caused a new ripple of dread. He was not offering a solution. He was stating the problem. The problem was not a bug. It was a paradigm. The holographic message flickered. For a heart-stopping second, the council emblem reappeared. Then it dissolved back into the galactic map, but the stand-down text was gone. In its place, a simple countdown appeared. 0 hours 58 minutes and 22 seconds. 0 hours 58 minutes and 21 seconds. The return of the Nexus. A gift or a reminder of the leash they had been on. It was both. As the numbers ticked down, the chamber remained in its hushed vigil. There were no grand speeches, no strategies debated. Each being was alone with the shattering of their world. The Grothan thought of their tranquil, photosynthesis-based culture, now forever shadowed by the knowledge that a silent human could be walking among their floating forests, unheard and unseen. The Thulians thought of their impregnable crystalline cities, now feeling oddly transparent. The Veil thought of their long, proud history of gentle stewardship, now revealed to be a fragility. They had believed their peace was built on wisdom and superior technology. Now they saw it had also been built on the assumption that no one could think differently enough to challenge it. That assumption was now dust. On Earth, in the command room, Dr. Juan watched the countdown sync across the screens. The operatives are disengaging, neural links withdrawing. The suggestion is fading. The Nexus is returning to its default state. Commander Su-Mi nodded, her arms crossed. She looked not triumphant, but weary, like a surgeon after a difficult necessary operation. Peacekeeper fleet status? Beginning to power up auxiliary systems. They're moving, but it's slow. Cautious. They're turning. They're leaving Earth's orbital space. Jay and Mina entered the room then, having returned via the hidden shuttle. The desert sun was rising over the monitors. No one cheered. The two ambassadors simply took their seats, their faces drawn. They had stood in the heart of the silence they had created. It was a heavier thing than they had imagined. In the council chamber, the countdown reached 0. The lights in the ceiling bloomed back to full, warm strength. The holographic seals of office flickered and stabilized. A gentle, familiar hum returned to the air. From outside, the sound of the city resumed, the whisper of anti-grav vehicles, the distant chimes of towers. Normality rushed back in, but nothing was normal. Elder Cathar took a deep breath, feeling. His personal energy shield snapped back into place around his podium with a faint shimmer. The feeling of safety it gave him was now a lie, and he knew it. He looked around at his fellow council members. Their eyes met his, and in every one, he saw the same stunned, silent acknowledgement. The human ambassadors had been right. This was not the end of a negotiation. It was the beginning of a new reality. He tried to speak, to call the session back to order, to begin the daunting task of figuring out what came next. But as he opened his mouth, no sound came out. It was not a failure of technology. It was a failure of idea. Every concept, every decree, every law they had ever passed felt suddenly small, irrelevant, built on sand. Flourish dash of dash. The dash dawn let out another soft, shuddering whistle, not of distress this time, but of pure, helpless awe. The sound seemed to echo the mood of the entire chamber. The Galactic Council remained. The great civilization they shepherded continued. But their certainty, their unchallenged authority, their very definition of power, had been hollowed out in 72 minutes of perfect, silent demonstration. They had been prepared for many things from humanity: defiance, pleas, a pathetic show of force. They had been prepared to be teachers, to be guardians, even to be conquerors. They had not been prepared to be students. They had not been prepared to be stunned. And so, as the systems restored and the galaxy slowly began to move again, the council did not move. They sat in their places of honor, surrounded by the restored glories of their technology, and they marinated in the silence. It was a silence that spoke of the end of an age. It was a silence that acknowledged the arrival of a new, unpredictable force that could not be commanded, only acknowledged. It was the silence of a predator who had just discovered, too late, that the quiet thing in the corner of the cave was not prey at all. Earth's savage retaliation had left no scars, claimed no lives, broke no stars. It had only asked a question they could not answer. And in the face of that question, the only response left to the ancient wise and powerful Galactic Council was a stunned, profound, and utterly complete silence.